Good evening. I'm Wendy Raymond, Vice President for Academic Affairs and Dean of Faculty. It's our tradition at Davidson for really important guests and lectures to offer two introductions. And so tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the Wearn family, the family that endowed the lectureship that brings us here tonight, Dr. Carolina Cruz-Neira. The Joseph Henry and John Mcdonald Wearn Lecture Fund was established by the late Dr. Joseph T. Wearn, Davidson class of 1913, as a memorial to his father, Joseph, a former Davidson trustee, and his brother, John, who died in France during World War I. As a first-year student at Harvard Medical School, Dr. Wearn attended a lecture delivered by a Nobel laureate that influenced him throughout his professional life. He wanted to create a similar opportunity for Davidson College students and specified that the Wearn lecturer should be chosen by the faculty for outstanding accomplishments in the sciences or exceptional statesmanship. Born in Charlotte in 1893, Dr. Wearn earned his Bachelor of Science degree from Davidson College and his doctoral degree from Harvard Medical School. He served as professor and dean of medicine and vice president of medical affairs at Western Reserve University, and also taught at Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania. He was a veteran of World War I and was awarded the Medal of Freedom for services performed during World War II. The Wearn Lecture is administered by the college's Public Lecture Committee, many members of whom are here with us tonight. Previous Wearn lectures include Stephen Jay Gould, Erskine Bowles, Mary Robinson, former President of Ireland and UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Paul Krugman, a Nobel laureate, Anne Applebaum, a winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and Angela Davis. The Wearn family has remained close to Davidson College, and we are grateful for their continued engagement with this lecture series. I turn now to Dr. Michael Mossinghoff, Professor and Chair of Mathematics and Computer Science, who will now introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm Michael Mossinghoff. I'm the chair of the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science here at Davidson. I'm very pleased to introduce our 2017 Wearn lecturer this evening. This is a special time in the department for us. We launched the major in computer science just less than a year ago on campus, and since then we've seen a great deal of interest in this subject. Now with 36 majors declared on campus and many more taking courses in our subject to augment their course of study. So I'm especially pleased that we're able to mark the inauguration of computer science at Davidson with this Wearn lecture. Dr. Carolina Cruz-Neira is a pioneer in computer science in the fields of virtual reality and interactive visualization. She's widely known for creating the CAVE automatic virtual environment, known for short by its recursive acronym, CAVE. Dr. Cruz-Neira obtained her bachelor's degree in systems engineering at the Universidad Metropolitana in Caracas, Venezuela, and her master's and Ph.D. degrees in electrical engineering and computer science at the University of Illinois in Chicago. In 2002, she founded the Virtual Reality Application Center, as well as the Human-Computer Interaction Graduate Program at Iowa State University, where she was the Stanley Chair in Interdisciplinary Engineering. In 2006, she became the Executive Director and Chief Scientist of Louisiana Immersive Technologies Enterprise, a public-private partnership for data visualization and simulation, while holding an endowed chair in the College of Engineering at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. In 2014, she became the director of the George W. Donaghy Emerging Analytics Center at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, where she continues to lead this today. Dr. Cruz-Neira's work is highly multidisciplinary and has been supported by grants from the National Science Foundation, the Army Research Lab, and the U.S. Department of Energy, among others. She received the IEEE Virtual Reality Technical Achievement Award in 2007, has been named as an ACM Computer Pioneer, and last year was cited as one of the top 25 innovators in virtual reality by the video game website Polygon. I'm looking forward to hearing more about her work in virtual reality this evening and its application in many fields. So please join me in welcoming our Davidson's 2017 Wearn lecturer, Professor Carolina Cruz-Neira. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me here in such a special time because I was not aware until last night about the computer science department or the computer science program being launched this year. So I feel double honored to be here, and special thank you to Dr. Peck for bringing me here, and thank you to everybody else that has made me feel so welcome since I arrived here last night. So I'm going to talk kind of a combination, potpourri of topics, because when we talk about virtual reality, realistically, we don't know what we're talking about. So I'm just going to throw a bunch of things over there and hopefully give you enough information so each one of you can form your own opinion. And those of you interested to follow this career path, maybe you have some additional ammunition to decide your calling. But things never start the way you anticipated. We were talking about that at dinner time, because my real calling was classical dancing. Had nothing to do with going to college and nothing to go to engineering, but due to my lovely parents, which my mom is here tonight, and they didn't think that a classical ballet dancing career was respectable enough. So, so they sort of twist my arm about going to college. And since I didn't really honestly care much about what to do in college, I was telling them, well, pick whatever you want to pick that is fast. I don't want to waste time doing homeworks. I don't want to spend a lot of time studying because I need to go to the dance studio. So, computers seem to be the career of the future. I'm not talking in the 1980s, and it had a lot of math and all that. I was like, yeah, I can wipe out a math homework in a second. So that will work. So I ended up going to this systems engineering degree in Caracas, Venezuela, because that was where my parents' business was at that time. And because I was in such a hurry every day to get to the dance studio, I ended up graduating, cum laude, and I actually ended up being the top student in the country. and that won me the scholarship to come to this country to continue my education. And initially, I rejected the scholarship, but unfortunately, a month later, I broke my knee. There went my dance career out the window. So fortunately enough, they did not accept my rejection of the scholarship. So here I am. So that scholarship took me to the University of Illinois in Chicago. And over there, I was very fortunate to intersect with some students that were in the computer graphics research laboratory, the electronic visualization lab, because I was probably like some of you younger people in the audience, trying to figure out, I'm 22 years old, I have a degree in engineering that I don't care about. Now I'm doing a master's and I have no idea what I'm doing here other than learning English. And suddenly, when I intersected with the computer graphics student, I realized, this is a branch of computer science and computer engineering that I was not aware of, but I see a glimpse of hope that it would allow me to intersect a little bit of my art interest with the more dry, for me dry, again, don't take this as a negative by any means, it's my personal experience, aspects of computer science. I was very good at low-level assembly programming. I was very good at doing things related to networking and all those because I was used to do it fast. So I was probably the best hacker you will ever meet in my time. I will hack away in 10 minutes. I will enter any network firewall that you want me to enter because I was late for the dance studio, So, but over there, that's when I start thinking, hey, this might be an opportunity to do something. And because I had the very strong discipline and self-drive that dance and for those of you that do sports, you understand that, you have to have that constant drive to keep yourself in very good physical shape, never drop the ball, because if you can do something today and you don't practice for a week, you won't be able to do it, and then you have to kill yourself for months to be able to do it again. I have that very strong driven discipline. Once I came to this country, I don't know, a lot of things start happening around me. For example, there was a competition for a scholarship to learn about high-performance computing, and it was hosted by IBM, Cray Research, and now non-existent connection machines. And I entered a competition, and I got the scholarship. So I was very, very fortunate that I spent a year of my life between the T.J. Watson Center in IBM with Benoit Mandelbrot and a lot of the pioneers in computing, also inside the heart of Cray Research with Mr. Cray himself and some other people like that, and same thing in connection machines. And that gave me a lot of perspective on the different opportunities that I was not aware of that computer science and computer engineering has, beyond perhaps what for me were the more dry aspects. So after I finished my master's, I was a little bit confused about, okay, now I have a master's. Now I can do graphics. Now what do I do? So I got an opportunity through IBM because they know me at the time. And they say, hey, we are releasing the RISC architecture system, which for those of you a little older, that was when in a sense, workstation and PCs really took off. So they needed somebody to do something exciting with that architecture that then IBM could go out there and kind of brag about, hey, this new technology, this is very helpful. So they implanted me inside Wall Street. So there you go, totally career shift again. So I was for many months in the middle of the stock exchange in New York, observing the trades and the brokers and how they work, and what could I do with my knowledge in graphics and my knowledge in low-level computer architecture. And I developed probably the first three-dimensional systems, visualization systems for the financial market. But at the same time, I was in Wall Street, and I was seeing people that were maybe 27, 28 years old having heart attacks and having, strokes and all those kinds of things, because it's a very stressful life. One day you're a multimillionaire, tomorrow you lost all the money of your customers. So I was like, this is definitely not my calling. I want to live a very long, healthy life. And then when I was trying to decide what to do with my life again, my professor that was my advisor during my master's called me up and said, hey, Carolina, I'm getting a very big grant to do this new thing called virtual reality. And this I'm talking about 1990, 1991. So would you like to come back and do a PhD with us on virtual reality? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I am done with Wall Street. So yes, I'm coming back over there. So then I went, and he sent me to see something called Tomorrow's Realities in a conference called SIGGRAPH, which is the premier computer graphics conference. So they had an exhibit about virtual reality and what it was about. And I spent about 2 days. I didn't really go to papers, presentations, or nothing. I spent those full 2 days, which I'm sure the exhibitors did not appreciate that, but I spent those 2 days in the exhibits with my nose in pretty much every single booth that had virtual reality, trying to understand what is this thing, because I'm supposed to do a PhD on this, and I don't know what it is. So this is why I start sort of kind of looking back now, is when I probably start thinking like an innovator. When I went and I looked, and I liked it. So my first reaction when I went to see this thing, was like, wow, this is really, really cool. I really think this is like so neat. And I'm sure those of you that are working with Dr. Peck, you will see a lot of that when you have people that have never experienced virtual reality, even today, that's the first reaction. Wow, this is super cool. Oh my gosh, I've never seen something like this before. But as I was doing that, I was like, okay, this is very cool, but they can have not possibly done everything that has to be done, because otherwise, why would this professor want me to do a PhD? So I have to figure something where there is, I don't know, a hole here, missing something, whatever. So that's, in a sense, like I said, looking back is where I started to think more critical, and things that I realized, as you can see on the picture, this is the kind of systems that were being shown. I realized, when I put this thing on my head, I am alone. I get into some virtual world, and I'm not there by myself. So why nobody is bringing their friends into virtual reality? Why is the technology not allowing me to bring other people? So another thing that I noticed, I'm a girl, and, intellectually, and for those of you that were chatting with me yesterday, intellectually, I'm a brain. I don't have a gender. But as a human, yes, I'm a girl. And as a girl, I don't like my hair messed up. So this technology messes my hair. So I don't see if this is something that I want to deal with on a daily basis. Hey, I pay quite a lot for my hairdresser to leave my hair like this, and I don't want to destroy it with that. So that was, something that bothered me quite a lot. Some other thing is, how do I look like to others when I'm in this thing? I have this thing in my head, and I'm doing strange gestures, I'm doing strange movements, and I don't know if I was very young at the time, so I was like, I don't know if these guys are peeking under my skirt while I'm doing this thing. So there were a lot of these critical questions that came to me. And then, of course, there was the question, okay, what's the point of this whole thing? Because so far, all I see are games. I am doing virtual surfing. Thank you very much. I know how to do the real surfing, so I don't need to virtual surfing. I am shooting penguins, okay. I prefer to look at them in the zoo. So what is actually the point of this technology? What exactly are all these people trying to do with it? And then finally, I was thinking, if it's a technology that is allowing me to do some work, I don't work alone, I work with others. So how can I do something where we can work together? So these were sort of the very early preliminary questions that I had when I knew nothing about the technology. That was my first impression. But it was in a sense, enough for me to say, I think I can do something in this field. I don't know what it is, but there is all these questions, and in these 2 days, everybody is ready to sort of put me against the wall and shoot me, but nobody has been able to give me any answers to these questions. So maybe I will have a chance to actually get a PhD out of this thing. So then I started thinking, okay, what is virtual reality? And for me, over the years, the answer to that question has evolved. So today I'm going to give you the answer that I think is today. If you asked me 5 years ago, I would have probably given you a different answer. But to me, virtual reality, as is portrayed in the media, or that it is conventionally taught in a lot of the courses, including mine, is a technology that involves the user in a complete digital reality. So in a sense, removes you from the real world and embeds you in a digital world. But we also talk about augmented reality. And augmented reality, people perceive it as a digital enhancement to the real world. So you still stay where we are, but we just enhance it. A couple of weeks ago, I was giving a talk in a high school, and my example for augmented reality was like, hey, you have a house, it's a beautiful house, it's a beautiful neighborhood, you have a beautiful garden, but every morning when you're happily looking out the window, enjoying the birds chirping and watching the nice sunrise, your extremely ugly neighbor just showed up, and you're like, oh, you just ruined my day. The ugly guy just showed up. Well, with augmented reality, you could superimpose a handsome face on your neighbor, but still keep everything else together, so you enhance your reality. So that was my my high school explanation of that. But what I mean is, these two technologies, a lot of people see them as disconnected, completely separate fields. To me, actually, they come together right now in 2017 as a technology that allows all of us to use digital content to enhance whatever activity we want to do. In some cases, depending on the context that we might be embedded in that particular moment, depending on the role that we might be playing in a team or on a project or an activity, it might be something that requires us to be isolated from reality. But in some other cases, we might want to be embedded in the real world with just an enhancement. So I really don't make any difference between the two technologies. To me, is pretty much a continuum of options on depending on what we want to do. But the main point is, of course, that it's about that experience that you provide to your users. What is that person or group of people need to accomplish when they are using this technology, and how you deliver that experience in a successful manner. So that's to me the main thing. So having a little bit more of maturity, then I revisited those first impressions. So here are the sort of the driving motivations of my work through the years. So we go back at the issue of being alone in the virtual space. And yes, some people say, well, you're not alone because you have now collaborative environments and there are avatars that share the environment with you and all those kinds of things. And yes, but it's not the same. It is not the same. And it's not the same to talk to me directly than to take to my avatar. The avatars are getting better, but there is still a lot of little things that we do, little shoulder movements, little head motions, I don't know, little wrinkles or something, that when you're having, especially in a business environment, an avatar today is not a substitute for a face-to-face conversation. So we're still a little bit alone in there. Things that are very important to me is to be me. When I'm in a virtual environment, I want to be me. I'm used to my hands, I'm used to my hair. In my peripheral, I ground myself through the little of myself that I can see in the real world. And a lot of the systems take that away from me, so it's very difficult for me to know if I'm actually standing on the ground or if I'm kind of hovering above the ground. It's very difficult to estimate distance because, as you see on the image, that's a virtual arm, but it's not my arm, so I don't know if that arm is as long as mine, so it makes it hard sometimes. Nobody really knows what I'm doing sometimes, and this is the famous picture of Palmer Luckey on the cover of Time magazines, and these are different interpretations that people did in the internet, kind of wondering, what is Palmer doing? We don't know. It's the turkey pose, but other than that, we don't know exactly what's going on. So when you're trying to work together, trying to second guess what your partner is doing probably is not very efficient. Some other issues is I don't know, I myself know where I am in the virtual world, but I don't know where I am in the real world. So that also precludes me from moving. I remember maybe there was some furniture, some walls, some cables, other people. So that limits sometimes inhibits me from freely moving around in the virtual space. And again, all those things can be arguable by all of you here. These are, again, my personal observations and like all those disclaimers, no other people was tortured to get this information. Also with the technology, for me, it's incredibly hard in my head to see this scenario in this picture as a regular activity. We are social animals. We like to share experiences. Even when we go to the movie theaters, how many times you do have to say, shh, quiet, because somebody in front of you is sharing the movie experience with the person that they have next to them. So it is a cool thing now, it is a trendy thing now, so some people put up with this thing, but on the long run, I don't see this as scenario. Imagine, having Thanksgiving is coming up next week. Thanksgiving dinner, the entire family gets together, and after dinner we say, hey, let's watch a movie like this. I don't see that. I don't see mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, baby in this scenario, I just don't see it. Maybe some of you will. I just don't see this scenario. I see it in some other settings, but not as one size fits all as we're trying to make it happen. There's also the issues related to comfort, and then, of course, the issues related to cyber sickness, motion sickness, and so on, that we're still having a lot of research to be done to understand what that really happens. So for me, these have been my driving points, questions, challenges, whatever you want to call it. And what I normally, the conclusion is that right now, same as 20, 25 years ago, the moment we say virtual reality, the immediate thing that comes to everybody's mind is, I need some sort of helmet or goggle to do virtual reality. Not really, not really. Because virtual reality is much, much more than just a head-mounted display or a helmet or a goggle. Virtual reality is any technology that takes you there. And that there could be some exciting fictional gaming environment, or that there can be a molecular system where you are watching some molecular reactions, or it can be inside of an engine to understand how that engine works, or some mathematical abstract space where suddenly math becomes alive. So what we are confusing right now, as well as we confused it many years ago, is the concept of virtual reality with the implementation of virtual reality. Another analogy that I was doing to the high school students, here is an example. What is a shoe? A shoe is, as a concept, is a thing that allows you to go from point A to point B, protecting your feet. Now, here is my question to you. Do you own a single pair of shoes right now? Can you do your entire daily, weekly, monthly, annual life with one pair of shoes? No, you can't, because you have your shoes to come to work, you have your shoes to go work out, you have maybe your shoes if you go hiking. I'm not sure what the main sports are in this part of the country, but you probably have, 3 or 4 different types. You might have your flip-flops to go to the beach or something like that. So you have a variety of implementations of the concept of a shoe depending on the activity that you are trying to do. And what I see that we're doing in virtual reality today is basically we are trying to go to the beach or hiking in the stiletto shoes that I'm using here to be with you tonight. That doesn't make any sense, because that is completely the wrong platform for that particular activity. It is the perfect platform to be here, and there is nothing wrong with the stiletto shoes. They are fun, they are great, they are wonderful in this context, but not in some other context. And that's something that I tend to get a little cranky about every time I open a magazine, because it's like, guys, this is a little broader thing than just that. So one of the reasons why then I got into all these thoughts and all these sort of analysis, then it led me to develop one of the things that people know me around the world with the cave. And now it's being called social VR, so the mother of social VR. You read on the press. So, so this was something that I did at the beginning of my Ph.D., where I was able to take all those questions, take all those challenges, blend them with my background in dance, being on a stage, and understanding how you group as a group, how you work as a group, and in a sense, how you choreograph several actions with a specific purpose. So as you can see here in this video, for those of you that are not familiar with that technology, is basically a projection room where the walls, the floor, and in some cases even the ceiling project three-dimensional graphics. One of the users is tracked to generate the correct optics. And as you can see on this video, it's a very natural conversational space while you are all embedded in the virtual reality that you might be doing work. In this case, it's three architects and designers. This is an actual project. We did it for the Tulsa, Oklahoma Zoo. So this was a study we did last year for a new pavilion. It's going to open in January, so if any of you goes to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and sees the snow leopard new pavilion, this is what it is. And there was a lot of controversy with this pavilion because, of course, there was the family that generously made the donations of the animals, plus the funding to build the pavilion. But there was, of course, the people in the zoo trying to figure out how we do this design that is appealing to our visitors. Then there was issues related with certifications for safety and so on. So this turned out to be a really good environment because a lot of different people could come together and explore this design and discuss the pros and cons from each one of their responsibilities and make some changes and come back and revisit it. So this is what the cave is about, and that's, in a sense, one of my contributions to the field, driven by those questions that I mentioned before. Just for kicks, I put you this picture in here. It was shown for first time in the conference SIGGRAPH in 1992. They changed my name tag for Cave Woman, and it took me 10 years after that to remove that nickname, because every time I went to any ACM or IEEE conference, my badge always came as Cave Woman, and I'm like, that is not my name. So affectionately, well, maybe, but anyway. But as you can see here, when the cave was shown for first time, there was lines and lines and lines of people. People will wait as much as 5 to 6 hours for a 2-minute experience. Now, as a student, you can imagine what that was for me, because I honestly did not expect this reaction. I mean, I thought people were going to like it, but when people were literally, slapping each other and elbowing each other to get in, I was like, this is strange, because it was just my little idea that I guess is a little, not so little, but anyway. So, but I think what happened when I did the cave at that time, again, and this is just my observations, I think one of the things that I guess I did was break the stagnant that the field had at that time. Suddenly, many other researchers around the world realized, hey, we are trying to equal the concept with the implementation. We can implement this in many other ways. So after I did the cave, as you can see in these pictures, many groups around the world made all kinds of variations, and there was actually a lot of progress in that window of time between 1992 and 1997. There was quite a progress on that, and it was actually a lot of fun. So for me personally, I was, okay, well, I finished my PhD, I have done this thing, everybody likes it. I was very fortunate. I had a lot of job offers. I did not seek any jobs, and I did not do any interview. It was just basically, I just have to say yes to somebody to go there. So at that point, I was, I didn't expect this thing that I did to be so popular. So now I feel responsible. For those of you that are, I don't know, you guys have engineering ethics as part of your education, but I had a lot of ethics hammered into me during my undergraduate degree. So I was, okay, I did something, and I'm responsible for the thing that I did. So I really need to understand what is it that I did. So that was my driving force to make a career decision from all the positions that were available to me. So I end up looking, okay, where can I go where I can explore what the cave can do outside gaming? I have never been interested in gaming, so that's major disclaimer. My husband plays games, my child plays games, my students around me plays games. I'm not too excited about gaming, so I just wanted to see how I can make this technology work for others outside gaming. and also try to blend the things that I know from my dance background, and also my family has been traditionally for generations a business family, and I've seen the struggles of make business work and how to accelerate your business, how to be first to market, and all those kinds of things. So then I realized, hey, university environment seems to be the right place for me to do this, because if I can figure out how to get funded, most of the administrators will leave me alone, I hope. They will not tell me what to do. But also, as being in a university environment, I'll have the freedom to here and there take some time off here and there to spend time in the business world, which I did. And then also in a university, I will always be surrounded by young, fresh, creative minds that will keep me also hopefully not physically young, but mentally young and stimulated. And this is sort of, I said, well, there are some universities that are calling me. And one of them was Iowa State University. And of course, everybody was like, why would you even consider going to Iowa? Why don't you go to like Boston? Why don't you go to the Silicon Valley? Iowa was intriguing to me because, of course, I didn't know if it was Iowa, Ohio. I was like looking on the map, what is this place? But at the same time, I was, this is going to be very intriguing because I could go to a place that traditionally is not a technology place, and I'm not sure what I'm going to find in there, but I bet I'm going to find a lot of interested people that might be as clueless as I am. And at the same time, they're not going to have a lot of baggage in the sense of preconceptions and you have to do things this way or something like that. So I decided to go to Iowa State University. So I ended up in Ames, Iowa. And the first thought when I went to Ames, Iowa, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just 3 houses and corn. I'm not sure that was the right decision. But it was the right decision. I met delightful people. I met one of the most smarter people I have come across in my career. And we developed there a big initiative, and the one on the top, this one right here. So when I arrived to Iowa in 1995, and in 1998, I had a plan to create the biggest research center for virtual reality, if not in the world, in the nation. I was extremely fortunate that the Dean of Engineering, the Provost, and the President of the university supported that plan. And we did a big capital campaign, which some of you know what that means. And we raised $60 million, built our building, and put probably the biggest, most concentrated infrastructure for this kind of research in the nation at that time. And it was called the Virtual Reality Application Center. And myself with 2 other faculty members, we started being 3 of us in 1995. And by 2000, we were 450 people, 50 professors, 400 graduate students, generating quite a number of millions of dollars a year on research. And we also created the first degree granting program in this technology. That center was so successful that then when Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana, then Kathleen Blanco, that was the governor of Louisiana at that time, she called me in towards the end of 2005, and called me and asked me to go to Louisiana to help on the recovery of the state, the post-Katrina state, to initiate some sort of high-tech digital initiative similar to what I did in Iowa, and that is this center at the bottom, the Louisiana Immersive Technologies Enterprise, or LIGHT. It was not affiliated with the university. It was like kind of like a startup funded through the government, and I ran it as the CEO for 3.5 years. And basically, we contributed to the development of a lot of bringing both the film industry as well as the gaming industry to Louisiana and giving them the initial support to get set up. And as you know, Louisiana is a focus of film production right now, and many gaming companies have a lot of branches also in Louisiana right now. And then 3 years ago, the governor of Arkansas wanted to do something like that in Arkansas, and it was the right time for us to relocate, so we went to Arkansas. So now we are in the middle of launching or creating the Emerging Analytics Center, which is that building on the top left. So we've been there for 3 years, and we are growing at a very steady pace. We are about 30 people now, 5 adults, like I call it, and 25 students, anywhere from entry-level freshmen undergraduates to PhDs and postdoctoral. And my hope is to grow it to maybe somewhere between 50 and 75 total, because of course right now the economy is not the same as it was in the 90s. It's a lot more challenging. There's not so much funding out there, but I think we still can be a fairly sizable team to do things. And related to what is happening here in Davidson College, starting in January, we are merging with the computing science department, so I'll be the director of the center as well as the department chair of computer science. So hopefully we can grow together and have a stronger focus on this type of technologies. But what all this thing was happening on my personal life, then virtual reality, as you know, disappeared from the public eye. So somewhere around 2000, 2001, suddenly we did not hear anymore about virtual reality. And people kept saying that virtual reality was dead. Well, I'm not sure how dead it was, because in my 10, 11 years in Iowa, we generated over $50 million on virtual reality grants. On my years in Louisiana, we generated over 8 or 9 million worth of not only grants, but also corporate projects in virtual reality. And now that I am in Arkansas, we have generated somewhere in the 3 years that we have been there, we have generated about $3.5 to $4 million for virtual reality. So for me, it's never been dead. I have been always very, very active. We've been always doing what's the next thing and so on. And I have a quick animation here for you to see. These are things that happened between 2001 and 2012 that the media did not really cover. Now, there is a very consistent aspect of this. Do you see any goggles in there? And this is not my work. This is the work of many people around the world. So some of the technologies that I initiated continue and grew on their own. So companies related to the oil and gas business use this technology on a daily basis. The automobile industry use this technology on a daily basis. The military training groups use this technology on a daily basis. More interestingly, in businesses, for example, like the appliance industry, especially in Europe, if you want to see how your new refrigerator, your new dishwasher is going to look in your kitchen, a lot of these companies have this type of technology as showrooms, so you can actually see how it looks like. Pharmaceutical industries, many, many other industries, but somehow the public didn't know about this, and still today they don't know about it. So there was nothing related to virtual reality is dead. For some reason, it was just quiet. Now, in 2012, suddenly, woohoo, VR is back, because Palmer put his idea for the Oculus Rift in Kickstarter, and most of you know the story. He was seeking for $200,000 investment, and in 48 hours, he surpassed $2 million in endorsements. And here we are. So now, no matter what you do, no matter which country of the world you go, any piece of press or magazine that you open, there is virtual reality everywhere. So our landscape today for virtual reality looks like this. Yes? No? These are prototypes that are coming into the market. I'm not supposed to show them, but I'm showing them to you. Yes? No? Am I kidding? What about that one? Okay, here's the kicker. So what have been done in 30 years? Nothing. We have done a lot, but if I read the press, we have done nothing. Because we even take the same shots for the cover of the magazine. There's 30 years between the top row and the lower row. So when you come new to this technology, ooh, innovation. Well, hey, look at that. The little girl is me. Not really. But to me, I have a big, big issue with this picture. A major issue with this picture. Big issue. Because there is a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous body of work, not only my own, but many, many wonderful, smart people around the world that have been working tirelessly around the world, that is not being recognized, that is being ignored, that nobody knows about it. So this is serious. This is very serious. Because we're heading on the same direction, and we're going to say 2 years from now, we're going to say virtual reality is dead. And it's not going to be dead, because that's not virtual reality. That's my stilettos that broke down because I tried to go up on the Everest. Of course they broke down, because it's not the right platform for me to go out there. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to use shoes anymore. So I have an issue, because when you talk to industry right now, the industry kind of is a little bit upset, because they're like, we've been doing this for years and years and years and years and years and years, and now there's all these people calling themselves pioneers. Well, hell, we've been doing that for the last 20 years, and this person just did it yesterday, and suddenly he or she is the pioneer on the cover of the magazine. So there's a lot of people cranky out there. But besides being cranky, the other thing that is happening is that the market of VR, and again, when I say VR is VR/AR, the market is really not listening to industry. And a huge opportunity is being missed. When you hear in the press saying, virtual reality and augmented reality is going to be a $200 billion business by 2015. How? If you're not listening to what industry needs, how are you going to make that market? So this is a big issue, because companies cannot, there are sort of serious games and all those kinds of things that help a lot, but there are many applications that are plain and simple, nothing to do with gaming. There are applications that have to be deeply scientific, deeply technical, that the techniques are different, the knowledge is different. Also, a lot of the companies, for example, when I did the cave, a lot of people think I'm a multimillionaire. I am not, because I donated all my royalties of the cave back to the University of Illinois for student scholarships. I was very fortunate that I did my master's and my Ph.D. without having to borrow a single penny, both officially through loans or unofficially through my family. So when I did the cave, I thought I would give opportunities like that to other young people. But by me doing that act of donating my royalties away, it also took away my opportunity to have a say on how the cave is commercialized and sold. So one of the problems that are happening today is a lot of the companies that distribute the cave continue with a business model that is no longer viable in today's economy. There are very few companies that can afford several millions of dollars to acquire a cave as it is today, and more importantly, that can afford the maintenance of such a system, where is, depending on the complexity of your system, could cost as much as $200,000-$300,000 a year just to turn it on. So there has to be some sort of evolution on a lot of these technologies to continue being useful. So we see people, especially industry, on a very tough spot, because on one side, they had to reduce themselves to use consumer gaming type technology, which doesn't quite cut it at the professional level, or make exorbitant investments on technology that is right now not financially viable. So one of the things that I've been doing right now is really trying to understand what industry needs to do and how we can bring that technology into the competitive trends, not only financial competitive trends, but also ease of use and maintenance and operations and so on. So the little animation that you see there, I actually showed it on Sunday before I came here. So we are taking the concept of the cave, and we have, in a sense, revisited, and we have come up with a new way, inspired on current trends, like the way the HTC Vive does it with the Steam VR and some other things like that. So now this system is in the process of being commercialized. We just got awarded the patent, and hopefully this thing will go to market on the $20,000-$25,000. So now it's affordable. Now people can take advantage of this technology. We're also exploring other technologies like the picture here. I personally think that something like the HoloLens-like technology really has a lot of future, because it brings the best of both worlds. It brings the best of what you get out of a helmet or a goggle, but it also brings the best of what you can get of something like the cave, because you are in the world, but you are also seeing the other people with you in the world. Granted, a little funky with the visor, but I can still see you, and it's you. It's not a representation of you. So a lot of my work now has to do with understanding all these things and how do we bring the most appropriate implementation to the right job. So my approach, and this is a picture of my current center, we have a very diverse set of platforms where when somebody comes to us with a need, we understand that need, and we figure out what is the proper implementation of the technology that addresses that need. That's my little son that he loves. He's our guinea pig for a lot of things that we do. So in the few minutes that I have, and you guys can kick me out of here anytime you want, I have some examples of applications that we have done over the years. So this first slide is very dear to myself, because these are my very, very early projects as a young assistant professor trying to figure out what to do. So for example, this up here, it was a success story because this was on data visualization. There was a company was having problems with a product. The product was out on the street already, and they couldn't figure out the problem. We worked with them. We were able to do some visualizations in the cave as well as in the desktop that we showed the data in a different visual arrangement, and they were able to find the problem and deploy it back to the field. The one over there, that was a project that we did with Procter & Gamble. It's also very dear to my heart because we were literally swimming in pee, because we were computationally solving the dynamics of pee on baby diapers. So those of you that have children, you know that is a very important piece of equipment when you have a child, because you want it nice and dry and not dripping all over the place. And also there is a very serious difference on how a baby boy pees and a baby girl pees. So that has a lot of implications in material design. So we spent quite a number of years working with the baby division at Procter & Gamble, doing very, very, very advanced high-performance computing work combined with virtual reality to understand literally the dynamics of pee to help them on their material research. So it was very exciting. And of course, what is excited about these things, to me, what is very exciting about these things is when I go to the supermarket and I say, look, the new Pampers are there. I had something to do with it. You know, and then when I have my own son, I was like, oh, this is the kind of one that we have to do, because I know this is being designed in a cave, and I know it's not going to leak. So, so these are projects that are very, very dear to my heart, because those are my early successes in my career. This was another interesting project that unfortunately did not continue because of some change on leadership in the company that we were working with. But it was very, very promising, and we're trying to pick it up now with another group. Along my life, another thing that I enjoy very much is high-performance computing. It just feels, you know, like this big thing. I'm going to get as much CPUs and as much computing as I can, and I have 3,000 in here, but I know NCSA has another 5,000, or woohoo, Argonne has 7,000 more. Whoa, give it all down to me. So high-performance computing for me is really the ultimate dream for computer science if you are, like I am, a systems developer. You just want to hug as much CPU cycles as you can and chuck all those networks and get the last bit per second you can get out of that darn network to make it all work. So we have a company that came to us and said, hey, we have to build these buildings all the time, and in order to get fire marshal certification, we have to build these buildings and burn them. And then the fire marshals see whether or not our fire prevention mechanisms responded accordingly. But sometimes the fire marshal is not looking on the right direction and tell us that we did not have something working properly, so we had to go back and build the building and reburn it again. So for any new building, there are millions of dollars that are, in a sense, wasted on building, and these buildings are built at approximately, not full scale, but about 70-75% scale. So each one of these tests is usually $2-3 million or more for them to do this. So they ask us, you know, can you guys do some sort of virtual reality simulation that the fire marshal can see the building on fire, and also for us to know what he or she is looking at. So when we do the real testing, because the real testing, they have to do it by law. There's no way to get around that. But what they were trying to do is minimize how many building burning they had to do. So we did this simulation where we used approximately, I think we were using like 5,000 or 6,000 CPUs to do the fire simulation in real time with a dedicated, I think, 40 gigabyte fiber straight into the cave, and then have the fire marshal, as you see in the picture, walking through this warehouse and actually giving the person even the ability to set a fire himself and see how the fire evolved over the building. So this was quite an interesting project, and it got deployed, but then due to some administrative changes in the company, it sort of got on hold, and I'm not sure what it is right now. We have done some performance, stage performances because of my dance background. This is a project that I was discussing with Dr. Wendy at dinner. We had a very big grant from the National Science Foundation to develop network of sensors. And that is a highly technical, it's a hardware-software type of combination research. And I was going out of my mind because it was just a little too much dry for me, you know, like, okay, motion sensors if somebody walks into the building, or heat sensors for this and all that, and it's very kind of like too much for me. So I had the idea to say, well, why don't we use a dance performance as our test bed for this NSF grant sensor network of sensors. Of course, everybody thought I was absolutely nuts by doing that, but it was a lot of fun because what we did is we created these special suits for the dancers that had a lot of sensors on them. They had heartbeat monitors, they had temperature sensors. We put pressure sensors like on their feet and their arms and so on, so we could determine how hard they were jumping and things like that. And quite a lot, I mean, they were really, really covered from head to toe in sensors. And then the performance, what we did is using all the data coming out from those sensors to then generate virtual stages, virtual props for the performance. So the people in the audience, of course, have to wear 3D glasses, like when you go to see a 3D movie or something like that. And the dancers were dancing around these virtual props. That the scenario, the stage was empty, but to the audience, it looked like it was very, very full. This was probably one of the most paper-rich and successful projects that we did, because by doing it, by implementing the network of sensors on a human body that is jumping and sweating and rubbing itself against the floor and all those kinds of things, we actually developed very, very robust, very rugged, very waterproof type of technology that, you know, you could pretty much run a semi-truck through these sensors and they will not break. Now, I always acknowledge our lovely dancers, because for 6 months they endure burns, electrical zaps, and stabbings and all kinds of things as we were cleaning this up. And they were extremely, extremely good sports. Elizabeth is the lady in the picture. So, but this was really a little bit of an offshot, but then my more serious colleagues that had a really hard time understanding what am I doing, they jump on board towards the end and end up being a really fun project and very, very technical. I mean, there were about 4 PhDs in computer engineering that came out of this on the design of the network of sensors, that they were very, 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 very robust. This is probably one of the most robust devices that we have ever developed. We have done some other things related to welding, for example. This was in Louisiana. After Katrina, there was a lot of need for welders, of course, to clean up all the damage on the oil rigs and the cities and all that, and to accelerate the degree granting for weldings. We created a virtual welding trainer, and you can see how it looks like here. So it's really none of the commercial, none of the existing technology. In this particular case, we developed the technology because we didn't find any commercial implementation of virtual reality that applied to this particular context. So we developed that one. I'm going to go very quickly in the last few things here. So things that we're doing more currently, things using, for example, augmented reality for maintenance training and assistance. I can show you the toy because this is being done for the military, so I cannot show you the F-16 training. But you get the idea what this is, you know, just basically guiding the maintenance personnel through the steps of a particular repair. I'm also very interested on incorporating physical motion in virtual reality. So here are 3 different types of treadmills that we have been using in the last few years. So the one over here is a military-grade treadmill, and it's embedded in a cave. It's an interesting device, but definitely non-practical. It's about $1 million, breaks all the time. Every time you have to call the technician, it's $50,000, $60,000 to come fix it. So we have done a lot of things with it, but it's not a device I would recommend anybody. But now through the gaming industry, these other 2 technologies are available at a much affordable acquisition price, but also almost zero maintenance. So we are doing a lot of work understanding how humans actually move inside the virtual spaces. So other aspect, just to wrap up, that is right now keeping me thinking a lot is what we are calling context-driven collaborative environments, which is basically how the same application can serve different roles. So here is a military example where the person in the middle is your soldier on the field trained. So he or she needs to be completely isolated from the reality, because you need that person to be completely embedded in the battlefield. So that person has to be cognitively immersed in that battlefield. And we're using the treadmills. We give that person the ability to run and crouch and do whatever he or she needs to do. Now, on the other side, right over there, on the farther side, you have the field commanders, where they need to understand what's happening on the battlefield, but they don't need to be that much immersed. They need to be able to understand where the different forces are, the activity on the field, and so on. So we're giving them more like a control station based on augmented reality and mobile devices. Kind of, if you guys have seen the movie Avatar, kind of like that control station on Avatar, but since we can now holographically project, as Hollywood does that, we simulate that through tablets and cell phones, which is devices that the commanders already have when they go on a mission on the field. We have another device, for example, like this table, that's where the pilots, the drone pilots, utilize to guide the pilots, the drones, into the battlefield. And then finally, something like the cave is the space where the very, very high-level commanders, situation room type of environment, they are all live with each other. Of course, they are all intercommunicating and constantly in touch with each other, and they see each other in the scenario. So we're very intrigued about this direction of research and how all this is gonna work, and there's a lot of work in there in user interfaces and things like that. We have extrapolated, for example, to an archaeological project with Dr. Krista Lewis, one of our colleagues in Arkansas. So she has an excavation in the country of Oman. We have done something where, for example, the tourists on the ground, when they see certain ruins, whenever they see those blue markers, if they put their cell phones or their tablets, they'll see a representation of whatever was there on the prime time of that installation. But if they go to the museum, like where Dr. Lewis is, they can see an updated, that is constantly being fed, map of the status of the excavation. And all these things are live. So let me skip a couple of things here. So this is some of our medical work that I know several of you have asked me about it. I cannot show you a lot of it because we are in the middle of a patent processing for this. So this is what I'm allowed to show you, but this is related to medical education, anatomy education. So this is the mode replacing, to some extent, cadaver laboratories that are much, is much more than this, but I'm not allowed to show it at this point. But we developed this table. It has depth perception, so you can understand size and scales very well. And as you are doing the different dissections, it's giving you the medical information and terminology corresponding to the different organs, bones, arteries, and so on. It's starting to receive awards and many things like that, so we'll see where this thing take us. So things just to wrap up, you know, that I have learned is that really to be a lot of the things that myself and my team has done that can be considered innovative is just based on knowledge. And knowledge is really understanding, you know, what has been done, what are people trying to do, being analytical and critical about things that you see, and not simply say, hey, I have an idea, and this is a great idea, I'm just an innovator, because sometimes, you know, and it happens to me too, I have what I think is a bright idea, and 2 days later, you know, I go home kind of hiding under the carpet because I'm like, you know, these people, so-and-so has done this before, so my bright idea, I guess it was not so bright. But understanding that is really key for that. I also learned over my life that the media doesn't really tell you the story of virtual reality, so please do more than just reading Wire magazine, you know, there's a lot more out there. Certainly, I'm hoping that with what I talked to you today, you realize that virtual reality goes way, 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 way beyond gaming, and we don't even know how far we can take it yet. And the concept, again, one size fits all is not really what we are doing right now. So my look forward, is this sort of diversity of platforms and really understand that there's a difference between the concept of what virtual reality is and the implementation of that concept. And finally, the fun thing is that no matter what you do, people are really happy every time they see it, and this is extremely rewarding. So with that, I appreciate you listening to my ramblings. I hope you learn a little bit with my talk. This is a way to contact me, and if anybody has some questions and is not too tired, I can go on a little longer. Thank you.
Dr. Cruz-Neira is open to taking questions. If you have a question, please come up and use the mic so everyone can hear you. We have one microphone here, and the other one is over to my right.
Come.
So I have a question about, you mentioned that a lot of current VR projects are done by using the helmets, and I think it was, I don't know what they're called, but the remotes thing, magical wands, the weld, and then they try to, they use that to move the characters, the virtual characters around in the virtual world. But you said that you were trying to get rid of that and then do something without helmets, without having the other kind of things. So what are the technologies that would be suitable for doing such job?
Yeah, I don't necessarily say that I want to get rid of them. What I would like is for all of us to understand that there is a place for helmets, and there is a place for caves. There is a place for who knows what that we maybe don't know yet, that we have to have a little bit of a broader mind to the technology. Now, my sort of, what I would like to do, and we have done some experiments with that, is taking the technology, for example, that is coming up from the HoloLens and what is called SLAM, where we can three-dimensionally understand the space. Instead of having to put goggles on us, what I would like to do is project directly over the space. So no matter where we are, this space will get transformed through projection. There's a little bit of work that Microsoft has done on that, and there's a little bit of work that some groups in France have done with that, and we are also experimenting with that, because then that would be, in my opinion, almost total freedom from having to put things on you. Suddenly I'm just transforming the space by shooting light into the space. We're very far from that, I can tell you that. This is not something that is going to happen next year. It might happen in the next maybe 7 to 10 years, because there is a lot of issues related to that based on if you are there and I'm here, you're looking at the projection this way, I'm looking at the projection that way. So how do I give you proper optics without any attachments to your body? So there are a lot of interesting research problems on that. And again, the key for especially younger people like you is to understand that there's a difference between a concept and how the concept is implemented. And there might be some implementations that are very cool, but that doesn't mean that's the only implementation. And you just say, oh, there are helmets and there are caves, and now there is this table, so there's nothing else. You might come out with something that is genius, I don't know.
Thank you so
I
much.
hope you do.
All right, thank you so much.
I don't bite, by the way. I do not bite.
With the virtual dissection table, is it mostly going to be medical schools, or do you think actual surgeons trying to develop new techniques would be able to use that?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. Right now, our focus is mostly educational, based on anatomical knowledge. In conversations with many doctors, not only our direct doctor collaborators, like last weekend I was in the Baylor Medical Center in Houston, so there is an overall, like sometimes in computer science we say the students don't know enough deep programming, they don't know deep C++, they don't know deep assembly, And that's not that you guys are not smart, it's just unfortunately our programs are so tight. We are so controlled by the number of credits, by the times that you guys need to graduate, that we are unable to incorporate more material. And there are certain aspects that you should be very proficient that you unfortunately don't get that proficiency until you become a professional, and through years of practice, you acquire that knowledge. In the medical field, that something similar like that is happening with anatomy. Medical students are not getting enough anatomy during their study period. So they want to incorporate through virtual reality a much deeper anatomical knowledge. So that's our focus. Now, our tools can easily be extended to surgical practicing, because once you have a full, correct anatomical body that you can manipulate it, we are right now focused on anatomical dissections, but there's nothing that will prevent it to do a specific sort of surgical dissections in the future. It's not our focus right now. All right.
I wondered if those simpler omnidirectional treadmills will work very well for your research, and given that when we saw the people in the Tulsa Zoo, they were maneuvering around the space, but they weren't using a treadmill at all. So what does the treadmill give you, and will those simpler ones work for you just as well as the $1 million one?
Yeah. We are actually in the middle of a series of experiments evaluating those kinds of issues, and I was discussing that with Dr. Peck at lunch today. We want to understand what we get and what we lose, because, for example, when we do work with the military training, especially for the Army, for the on-foot soldiers, as a training system that doesn't include physical exertion is not very helpful, because a soldier has to make a split-second, life and death, very complicated decision, and it's very different if that decision is being made in a simulator where the soldier is now physically tired versus when the soldier is exhausted because he ran 20 miles with 100 pounds on their back. So the treadmills for certain environments are critical because they introduce that physical exertion that you don't get by exercising your thumbs with a joystick. So there are applications where, in a sense, it's almost a necessity to have your user getting tired. Now, there are other applications like walking through the zoo environment, which it might be an enhancement to the experience, but it might not necessarily be a critical component on the system. So right now, the series of experiments that we are running in our center, and hopefully some that we will collaborate with Dr. Peck here, is trying to compare if I have to go from point A to point B in the virtual environment, what do I get and what do I lose if I go on this treadmill versus using my joystick to point and physically I'm not moving and navigating, or we use Dr. Peck's techniques of something called redirected walking. So we are in the process of evaluating those kinds of things, because from my points I work a lot with industry, as you saw in some of the examples that I gave. If, for example, walking with the treadmill on something like the zoo gives me maybe a 5% improvement on the quality of the experience, on the overall quality experience, I might not recommend to do that, because introducing the treadmill introduces an extra level of technical complexity, expenses, again, maintenance, upgrades, all those kinds of things, and maybe I don't get sufficient benefits to do that. But if at the end of my experiment I seek maybe introducing the treadmill, I get 40%, 50% increase on the quality of the experience, maybe I would recommend that. So we are in the middle right now of evaluating those kinds of parameters. And hopefully you'll know about it because we might do something together.
Maybe a bit technical, but I'm just curious, what are you doing to like solve some of the mechanical limitations with VR, like tactile feedback and motion sickness and things like that?
Very good question. We don't spend, my group, we don't do a lot with tactile or force, which is called haptics. So we don't do a lot of research on that ourselves. We do keep an eye on what is coming. It's a technology that is very hard if you know how the human body works. You know, your eye, you can fool the eye at approximately 96 hertz. You can fool the eye thinking this is a continuous world and depth and all those kinds of things. To do that kind of fooling on your skin, you have to go over 1,000 hertz. So creating a device that can go at that, let's say, frame rate is very challenging. And there is a lot of extraordinary researchers around the world that are brave enough to attack that line of research. Right now, there is really nothing out there that is practical. There are some exciting technologies that if you close your eyes, you can feel things. But then there is a whole room of electronics. There's a little thing like this and a whole room of electronics behind it, so it's not really practical. Other aspects like motion sickness, the work that we do comes again from knowledge, comes from understanding what our users have to do in that particular virtual environment, and that drives the implementation. So we are very, very picky when we design our environments on things like frame rate. We want to guarantee that our environments run at a fixed frame rate, not 27 frames per second now 24, now 32, now 28, because that, for example, is a factor that can cause motion sickness. We also try to the best that we can to control also the content of the applications. Some applications don't necessarily require 6 degrees of freedom movement through the application. If you are doing an application where you are, just for example, like the zoo. If I'm navigating through the zoo, I'm not gonna be upside down. So we constrain the navigation to certain directions, and no matter how you move your joysticks or button presses or something, we don't let you get upside down. So there are things like that that again comes from knowledge and experience that we build into our design. There are other groups that are more focused on the hardware, so they're trying to design different type of lenses, different type of materials that also contribute to improve on that. So it's ongoing work.
Thank you.
Your PhD thesis.
Thank you for your talk. It's really great hearing about the early history of VR. I wondered like how your background in dance changed your thinking or even challenged your thinking about VR.
My background in dance, what I can tell you, it has made me a lot less serious. So I don't take my work as serious as some of my colleagues. And again, a lot of these comments, please, please, please don't take them in a negative way or take them as an offensive manner. It's just, you know, I go with the flow, which is more the artist way. You know, I take a lot of sometimes risks and chances that are, my engineering part of side helps me to do more calculated risks that if I were just pure artist and say, you know, whoa, here we go, you know. But it also, like I said earlier, it also, my background in dance has incorporated a kind of discipline and tenacity that sometimes I don't see on my colleagues. I don't give up. I go, I do it. I practice, I try, and if this way doesn't work, I'm gonna try this other way. So there are things like that that influence my work. Also, it takes me to paths that everybody sometimes thinks, what is she doing? Like this stage performance that I mentioned, you know. I was talking with the NSF program director many years ago that gave us the money, and she was, you know, never in my wildest dream I would imagine that somebody from my program, which is network of sensors, would use a stage performance as the test bed to evaluate the sensors. So we tend to do a little bit off-the-wall projects sometimes, but also it's good for the students because, again, it helps them to think differently. It also gives a lot of adrenaline rushes because this is a very hard deadline. You know, you have people that have bought their tickets in Ticketmasters, and Dr. Cruz, my sensor broke, doesn't cut it because I got 3,000 people in the theater that are with their little ticket waiting to see. So it's not, I think our group is a little bit unique in the sense that we do things in non-conventional ways, but somehow it all comes together like a performance, you know, it's chaos behind the curtain 5 minutes before the performance starts, but then magically when the curtain goes up, everything works. You know, everybody comes together and things just happen. So that's pretty much how I run it. And I have to acknowledge that not all the students in my team make it in my team. It is very demanding. It's extremely demanding. So not everybody is cut out to be in my group. So there are some students that come with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, but they just cannot keep up. And again, that's that determination and perseverance that comes from, you know, I'm supposed to do 8 fouettes and I'm only doing 6, so I'm gonna spend the next 5 days in the studio if 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 until I get my 8 fouettes. You know, where some other students, well, I do 6, that's good enough. Why do you want 8? Well, I want 8, you know. If you cannot give me 8, then go with Dr. So-and-so. He'll take your 6. But I want 8. And when you do 8, I'm gonna ask you for 12. You know, so my students know, they come like, oh, there she comes, you know, and they come like, well, I'm afraid to tell you that I got this thing done because you're gonna tell me to do more on it. And I'm like, well, of course, what do you expect, you know? So those kinds of things, I guess.
Can you just talk to, like, because we're in the age of acceleration, machine learning or deep learning, and how that's beginning to cross over with virtual reality and some of that, and do you see things speeding up as you get older and, you know, as technology begins to take over more and more, and where do you see virtual reality in, like, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and how does it cross over with everything else?
Okay,
do you have a vision?
That's a scary question. That's a very scary question. About machine learning and deep learning and all that, we use that because many of our virtual worlds require that. We do, for example, projects with the financial industry, so we integrate a lot of machine learning, and that's not my specialty. We, of course, work collaboratively, so one of the members of my team is a faculty member, Dr. Milanova, and that's her specialty. So we do a lot of work where we make sense of the data and then we present the data visually. So those are things that definitely influence what we do in virtual reality. I mean, an influence and is bidirectional, because with virtual reality, in a sense, we give a much bigger real estate than a computer screen to put your data. So we are not limited by the edges of your screen. Now we have, in a sense, infinite space to spread out your data. And that's another big challenge, you know, how to use that infinite real space on the humongous sort of big data challenge that we face today, So that's a big challenge. Where do I see it going in the future? Again, without the intention to get anybody upset about it, I personally don't see a lot of future on the goggles. I didn't see future in the goggles 20 years ago. I don't see future in the goggles today. It's a good tool to help us understand the concept of virtual reality. I don't envision that all of us are going to come in the morning to our office and we're going to stick a goggle on our face until 5 o'clock in the afternoon when we go home. I just don't see that happening. And that's just my perception. I do see, again, technologies perhaps like something less invasive, like the type of technologies that the HoloLens, the Meta helmet, the mixed reality technologies that are coming up, and some other things like that that are less invasive and that allow us to be humans, allow us to just have the social interaction that we need. We had some interesting discussion not too long ago in another group about some of those things can potentially be implanted in our brains, or it can be implanted in our eyes. I don't know. Just as a reference, for example, I work with a physician that treats amputees, people that lose arms or legs or something like that, and there are therapies for pain control that require implanting some electrodes in the spinal cord, and she has a fairly large number of patients that do not want to have that implant, even though it will ease their pain. So that tells me, if people that really need an implant do not want to have an implant, will we have an implant for sort of recreational purposes? So I'm not sure. But to me, I would say that we need to really, to be successful, we'll have to go through less invasive technologies and much easy sort of using a passé term, ubiquitous virtual reality that is there, but in a sense you don't feel it's there. That's what I would like to do, and that's why we continue working on technologies that are not on the user, but on the space where the user walks in that space. Yeah, but I don't know. Who knows, maybe next year you will all be laughing. Oh, look what she told us last year, and look what's going on right now. I don't know. It's very hard to predict. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming, and let's thank Dr. Cruz-Neira again.